In this episode, I would like to show you how I've built a furnace, which runs on charcoal and can reach temperatures of up to 1200 degrees Celsius. It all began when I decided to make use of an old steel plate, which I've had laying around for more than a year now. I figured that since buying a kiln or a foundry wouldn't be optimal for my budget, I could as well make an all-purpose heating device. I began by cutting the steel plate into 5 parts, which would then make up the walls of my furnace. So here I have my blower, which I've used for some of my previous projects. And I've made it from an air pump and a piece of stainless steel pipe. And I would like to incorporate it into my furnace. So to do that, I'm gonna have to make a cut in one of the sides of the furnace. So I've realized that I've messed up all the angles, because in the pentagon all the inner angles are supposed to be 108 degrees, and here they're all different. So I'm gonna have to cut this apart and remake it using this device. Alright, so I know the welds came out looking not so good, but in either case, my next step will be to clean all the surfaces from the rust. Alright, so now that I have the main body of the furnace assembled and polished, I now need to cut it into 3 parts. The bottom of the furnace will have forced air coming in, then the middle section of the furnace will have charcoal, and then the top of the furnace is where I'll have my crucibles or any other material that I'll be heating. So as I have previously mentioned, I would like to make this furnace in 3 parts, and that is because I not only want to use it as a kiln and as a foundry, but also as a hearth to heat steel. Now, to do that, I'm going to cut this part in half, and right here I'm also going to make 2 cuts, one here and one at the bottom. That way, if I have any material that is longer than about 30 centimeters, which is about 1 foot, I can lay it across and heat it in the middle if I need to. So now that I have built the top section of my furnace, I now need to think about the air supply. Now, since I want to be running my furnace on charcoal, I need to have some kind of surface which will let air pass through, but won't let the charcoal fall through it. So, logically, I want to use this perforated steel screen. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite big enough, so I'm going to have to flatten out these corners, and then it should cover most of the surface. Now, it might look thin. However, in the past I've done some similar furnace experiments, and as you may see here, this was the heated section, and it survived relatively well. Okay, so while I'm finishing up the furnace, I'll meantime make some charcoal, which I'll be using as my fuel. To do that, I have purchased this metal trash can, which has a very nice lid that seals it off. And I'm going to fill it with wood and then bake it in the fire for about 3 to 4 hours. Now, speaking of the air pump, I would like to slightly modify it by adding this valve. That way I can supply different amounts of air to the furnace. So now that I have the whole furnace assembled, along with a decent supply of charcoal, I would like to see if I can melt some aluminum. As my source of aluminum, I'll be using some old aluminum fasteners. So speaking of the handle, the reason why I decided to make it out of chain is because chain links don't heat each other up as much as a single piece of metal. So even while the furnace is hot and running, I can still open it with my bare hands. So now that the aluminum is almost up to its melting point, I'm going to do my last high temperature burn. The segmented design of the furnace not only makes it easier to carry, but also allows for different parts to expand and contract at different rates, and therefore putting less stress on the metal. So I'll be going for another round, and here I have some of my older aluminum melting attempts. At last, if the furnace is to be used as a blacksmithing hearth, it is optimal to do so without the top section. I also don't think that the charcoal bed will need a replacement anytime soon, since the air supply provides sufficient cooling. Alright, so I think melting aluminum was a pretty good demonstrational test. However, in the future, I'm planning to do some more elaborate experiments, such as making bronze, which will require much higher temperatures, or perhaps making pottery, which will require slightly lower temperatures but much longer burns. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time.